All right, everybody, here it's Harry from H Coolest One Gaming. So today I picked a topic that's closer to my heart. So we're going to talk about Alita Battle Angel, Gundam, Gun Dream, Battle Angel Alita, whatever you want to call it, whatever area you're from, it's all the same thing. So we're going to talk about how a bunch of YouTubers talked behind the scenes and ruined the Alita Army. So the Alita Army was a movement that was coined by a bunch of influencers on Twitter, and the whole purpose of the movement was to make sure that Alita Battle Angel, the movie by James Cameron and Rodriguez, was a success, and they continued making more. But what they did had the exact opposite effect on the entire franchise, all because of a bunch of people behind the scenes tried to make money and benefit themselves. So the reason why I'm talking about this is I actually was involved in a lot of this stuff, and I saw a lot of stuff happen behind the scenes. And it's kind of sad how all this happened, but it is what it is. So to give you all a rough idea, the Alita Army was an established group, mainly on Twitter, and they tried their best to revive, to make, to create, to help with this franchise. But the way they went about it, especially the original people involved, is that they were trying to profiteer off of it. They were trying to prop themselves up because a lot of people that were originally involved were YouTubers and influencers. Now, all this came about because of an individual called Eddie McTrigger. Yeah, Eddie McTrigger, which is a false name for an individual who's claiming he worked in the movie industry and knew how to properly advertise. That's what his entire gimmick was. And he actually brought over a lot of people. He brought over Dakido, which is a account that was made just for Alita, just for statistics. We have Firefox on YouTube, who no longer has a Twitter account, ironically. Star of Elon, who's now protected on Twitter. You have Dizzy B, who's another one, but he came in later, so he's not really blamed for too much. The Last 300, which is another YouTuber. And of course, we have two individuals. One had a cult account, which I couldn't find his name. He's a cult account on YouTube. And the other one is named John Lutz. And John Lutz jumped in late in the game. He's a younger guy, and he kind of fell for a lot of the stuff that everyone else was doing. So this is how they ruined the franchise. They were harassing Rosa Salazar, who's the main star. They were doing unnecessary events. Like they flew a banner over the Oscars that said hashtag Alita Army. They were propping up the wrong people. Believe it or not, they were propping up people like Elon Musk about the whole Alita Army thing, which in hindsight seems like a bad idea. And they were doing everything in their power to promote the movie versus anything else in the franchise. So the movie is a incomplete telling of the first 9 books of the series. So the movie only covers 2.5 books. So you would assume that if you really want to make more fans of the franchise, you would promote all of the material, right? You would promote everything. But they weren't going about it that way. They were literally just propping up the movie and Rosa Salazar. That was it. They didn't talk about any of the other fans. They didn't really bring anyone else into it, really. And it's kind of a shame because the Alita Army now is a whole different group of people, because once these individuals realized that the Alita Army wasn't going to succeed, they all just walked away. So they took the car, crashed the car, walked away from the crash, no repercussions, no views, no nothing. And it's really interesting. So the Alita Army Twitter account used to be run by Firefox, Star of Elon, John Lutz, and the Last 300, I think it was. I think it was 3 or 4 people that were running the account. And all they would do is every day they would post about Rosa Salazar or something involving the movie. Now, they would ignore the artist, the one that created the series, Yukito Kashiro. He had YouTube accounts and everything. He's a very under the bar kind of artist. He's a very good artist. He's very nice. He's very shy, but no one would talk about him. They would ignore Valkyrie, which is a band that they actually propped up that is actually tied to Alita Battle Angel. They would ignore them. They would ignore the Wikipedia page, which you figure would be a main point to this. And literally, to give you an idea, what ended up happening was these individuals were power tripping, and they literally went into the franchise looking for gold. Is pretty much what happened. And once they realized there was no gold to be made, they walked away. So all this came about when the first movie came out. There was a bunch of older fans like myself who were already involved in the franchise, and the beginning of the franchise had a very rough period because right after the movie came out, they had people like Clownfish TV talked a lot of smack about the movie, talking about it was really bad, and the movie got some really bad press with a lot of YouTubers. So because of that, the movie had a pretty low turnout in the US, but it had a pretty high turnout in China, for example, and Japan. So the movie bombed. It bombed. There's no other way to explain it. I went to the world premiere. I loved it. But not your average person was good or looking into it. Like, it was bad timing. It was right before COVID kind of thing. And it was just bad overall. So these individuals came up with a plan. Their plan was to make a hashtag, Alita Army, which had nothing to do with the franchise, okay? Which I thought was hysterical because they had a bunch of groups in the manga that they just completely ignored. So they went with Alita Army. They started hashtagging Alita Army on everything. And what they started next was they started making a bunch of YouTube videos about Alita. And this kept propping up things. They started manipulating the Twitter algorithm. They started planning on certain times and days to just all keep hashtagging Alita Army over and over and over again to make it trending to where normal people would see it. Well, obviously that got very annoying to a lot of people very fast. So they were doing that on one end. On the other end, on Facebook, they were slowly trying to take control of the Alita Facebook groups. So what they ended up doing was that they made a bunch of low Facebook groups. They made a central group, which is where all of these individuals talked about their plans. And it was just them for the most part. And it's funny because I think it was Alita Army, and then it had Alita Army in Japanese at the end of it. But it was obvious because it was all just them, and there's screenshots of just them like conspiring on what to do. And they slowly started trying to wrestle control of the original Gundam groups from those admins to take over themselves. And what ended up happening was that they eventually pushed everyone out. They took over the group, and then they started pushing Rosa Salazar on everyone. And what they did next was crazy. So they started harassing her to the point to where Rosa Salazar stopped taking fan mail because they had a legit campaign where they just sent birthday cards, like thousands of birthday cards to her on her birthday. And if you're a low-level actress, that may seem flattering, but it overwhelmed her. She ended up deleting her Instagram. She ended up walking away from it. And it was really interesting how they focused on just her and not the franchise. Like, you figured that you would want the franchise to succeed so that she would have a job. But they focused on her because she's a female. Like, it was really interesting. Eddie McTrigger was the main one who orchestrated a lot of stuff. He's the one that did the advertising for Hollywood. And it's really crazy looking back into it and digging into it that he was able to do all this. And he's on Twitter. Well, I don't think he is anymore. A lot of these guys like Firefox, the last 300 and him delete their accounts after, all this fell through. But they're still on YouTube. They're still on Facebook. They're just hiding. They're just hiding. Well, after the birthday card thing fell apart, because that's around when the DVD started getting released, they tried the banner. They did an organized campaign where they took money from fans to fly a banner above the Oscars, and then a lot of the money disappeared. Yeah, I left an awkward silence for a reason. They got the banner to fly across, and then they kept everything else for themselves, which is crazy to me. And after that fell apart, they did a few more last-ditch efforts, like Elon Musk did his little Photoshop, the Alita Army thing on the rocket, and then they started to slowly realize that they were not going to succeed. in what they were doing. And they all just wiped the plate clean and walked away. They handed the Twitter account to new admins who were still passionate about it. And then they just like said whatever. So they literally came in, they conspired to make money. Everything fell through, and then it just walked away. And matter of fact, the YouTube account for Alita Army is still run by them. And the YouTube account, they literally ran the YouTube account up to the point to where they started getting paid, and then they just kind of like started putting out content. So they literally made the YouTube account to make money for themselves in the situation. And it's really interesting to see how all this played out, because if it was run by pretty much normal people or every regular fans, then the whole thing might have worked out in the end. It might have been successful. They might have been able to do more and more and more, but it wasn't. It was just made by a bunch of guys that are trying to profit off of it. And it's really sad to see it happen, but it's really intriguing to see how it all fell apart over time because of a bunch of greedy individuals. And my personal favorite was, let's see, who was it? Eddie McTrigger is obviously one of them because, you know, fake name, fake profile, let's trust this guy kind of thing. But then you had Firefox, who became one of the main administrators to the Facebook group, for example, and he started kicking out everybody who disagreed with him. So he just like revamped the whole group, and I don't know, it's really weird to see a fan group grow and then destroy themselves in the exact same moment. Also, a bunch of YouTubers can make money. So everybody, Harry, and that is literally how the Alita Army destroyed the fan base for Alita Battle Angel. It is a phenomenal comic, great series, great artists. Even the anime, the two OVAs are really good. But it just took a bunch of guys looking for money to ruin it for everybody else. And here we are. No movie, no sequel, bunch of angry guys and a bunch of angry YouTubers. All right, everybody. Peace.